No, because these are clearly, I mean, anthropologists will also study, and the sociologists, of course, they are the scientists in this space, if you want to call them scientists. But as a, I think it's also the stories we've been told, right? There's always a need for a big win. The movies we watch, whether it's Lagan or whatever. I don't watch movies, but I'm just giving an example out of my, from what I've heard. But in the books we read, right? I mean, there's this kind of, I'd have to celebrate yoga going, we are the nation of yoga. But can't it be more subtle? Like, in the sense, these stories we hear, like, there's so many things which are joy, full of joy, or full of pain, or full of sorrow, or full of life in India. There's so many daily occurrences which are so unique to our country. Like, just the fact that someone who doesn't have is coexisting with someone who does have. These are stories which are truly unique, right? In some way, when you have a person, be it, a person coming and working at your home, going back to their own area, their own home, which does not have as much. Aren't these the things that we should kind of acknowledge and say, okay, we do have a lot of disparity, but yet people who don't have in India find, of course, I'm not generalizing, but people in India who don't have find a way to find joy in life. And instead of kind of just running after the 5 success stories that came out of India, shouldn't we also acknowledge and start looking within, as opposed to looking without for validation or approval? And I'm talking as a society on a collective level, but also as individuals.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And, the thing is that in India, if you look closely, see, the thing is that it is there. For instance, just the other day I was watching, there's this guy on Instagram called Sam Bentley who, collects stories of environmental successes across the world, and, people doing innovations that help improve the environment.
Yeah.
So he was sharing the story about an Indian woman who lives in a little village somewhere in the south. I've forgotten where it is, and how she has taken it upon herself to clean the beach. Mm-hmm. And she's a village woman, so she's not one of your sort of well-educated urban people. She's a village woman. But she has taken it upon herself to get her neighbors all together, and they've started off this little cooperative sort of thing where they clean the beach and they recycle the plastic and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. Wow. And these are the sort of things, if you actually look out for, in the newspaper and all, it won't appear there in the newspaper, but there are these little niche places where there are these amazing stories about people who are very everyday people doing all sorts of really creative, innovative things in a small way. They may not be huge. That's the point. They're not being celebrated. They're not celebrated. And I think that is one thing which is like, we should talk about that more than about who went to Cannes and who sort of is giving away an award at BAFTA or whatever. Because I think that we have got so much into this habit of only celebrating big entertainment, big sports, cricket especially, politics. There are these few things, whereas what we should be celebrating is the common person, the everyday person, and the sort of things people are able to do. Even something so simple as actually sort of standing up for, something like sort of, communal harmony or whatever, in a small way, whatever.
Yeah.
So, people who actually have the guts to do something, even if it's small, even if it's just them as individuals, I think that is what we need to celebrate. That is what needs to be known, because that's what reinforces our humanity and takes us a little deeper than what we are. We've become rather superficial. I think that is the problem.
And I think that's the part which is a little difficult for me, to kind of consider when we're looking at the future for India, which everyone says that one of the biggest emerging superpowers, a potential superpower. And of course, there are a lot of good things, and I don't want to get into politics, but a lot of good things that have happened, which I think are, marks of progress, whether it comes to, I mean, again, I don't get into a debate of politics, but which party did what. But, the thing is, when these external points, whether it's an Indian winning an Oscar, or the first Indian billionaire on the Forbes list, or all these things, I think it's good. I think, but the problem is on a scale of India, when those become the anchors to success, I think it's very unsustainable, because then everyone wants to be the next Sundar Pichai, or everyone wants to be the next Rishi Sunak, or whatever it may be, right? These examples are few and far between, but then the idea becomes every parent starts using that as an example to drive their child hard. And this is what we were talking about before we started recording. At the age of 4 or 5, you start putting pressure on play schools, and schools obviously serve a demand. And that gets a little unsustainable, because how do you go and tell, okay, don't even take the entire Indian population, but take 10%. How do you tell 150 or 100 and 200 million people that this is the dream? As opposed to, taking joy in these small things, the interaction with grandparents, or saying, this Bhel Puri guy was there since I was a kid, or like the way he sustained his business. I'm just giving examples, but these are things which we can appreciate within our community. It could be within the neighborhood, right? Yeah. I'm not saying respect your elders and be like the typical, what you watch, touch their feet kind of thing. Because I think this, if you tell someone, because right now, you have people who got access to phones, which earlier they didn't have. And as a result of the internet, to Google, to YouTube, and they're watching these things, right? Whether it's, Ranveer Singh or Deepika at things, and nothing wrong with these examples of success and these examples of people going and making it in Bollywood. Absolutely not. But I think we need to counterbalance it with appreciating these smaller, more lifelike events which are happening, which I feel is missing.
Yeah. I agree with that. And, also what happens is that when everybody's talking only about the people who are making it big and not talking about the smaller successes, then you stop aspiring for the smaller successes and you think, oh, that's nothing.
Yeah.
So to actually say that, this is as big a success as, say, Deepika going to Cannes or whatever, BAFTA, whatever she's going. But to say that, this village woman cleaning the beach is something to be celebrated as well.
Yeah.
Or, and equally.
Because that beach is something which we all have to acknowledge is a part of our country, right? It's not just a certain border disputed or a certain win over a certain geographical kind of, territorial issue which represents India. But these are the things which I think go unacknowledged, right? Because we kind of, again, I say that the shift is outward, which I think is still fine. I still think, I think there's this kind of escapism, right? Where we want our weddings to simulate Bollywood weddings. We want to live it up big, which again, I think nothing wrong with it, but there's this idea which I think we're sold a certain story, which is no longer serving us. Because if 1.8 billion people want to become Deepika, it's very unsustainable, or whoever it may be. And I think the idea of progress needs to be, I think, looked at,
Yeah.
Like
I think also, sorry, no, go on.
No, please go on. I just wanted to, I'll keep rambling, sorry. No, in the sense, the idea of progress is reduced to these 3-4 things, which I don't think is fair.
Exactly. I think progress is, most of the time these days we're looking at progress in only economic terms. I think we should also look at progress in humanitarian terms. And, how have we progressed as a society? Not how much we are earning, which is good, of course, which has to be there. A country has to make progress in the economic sphere. But how are we progressing as a people? And all the things that make people, the humanity of us. So I think that, we need to work on that.
You mentioned in your blog, I read this on your website, and sorry, I didn't read all of them, but this one's about you visiting, I think, Ahmedabad, right? And you spoke about your this travel experience there, how there's this ultra modern setup on one side, and then this heritage part, which is I wouldn't say squalor, but is just an assault on the senses for various reasons. So you think in some way that is representative of where we are as a mindset?
Yeah, I think actually that's a very good, that's a very visual example of what we mean. That Ahmedabad, I was quite startled at how upmarket and how glitzy a large part of the city is. I was surprised because the sort of, fancy malls and the clean streets and all is not something I expect, even in a place like, say, Delhi, which is what I'm most familiar with. But when you go to the heritage part, the old Ahmedabad, which is where most of the sort of the monuments of the old city. The old city, by the way, is a UNESCO World Heritage city.
Yeah.
So you would expect that it would be like, it would look as if it is sort of a World Heritage city, and like, it would be cleaner and all, but it was actually quite dirty. So I was like, and it was a little squalid. I mean, I don't mind crowds. I'm used to crowds. If you're in India, you get used to crowds.
Yeah.
It's crowds, but it was the smells and the just general air of somewhat seediness, which is really sad because then you realize that all the money has been pumped into just making a very pretty facade in places where maybe the moneyed, they frequent those places. Whereas I would think if you really want to sort of capture the tourist crowd, you might want to do something. If you want to be totally mercenary and just go towards sort of making sure that you get more tourists, then you should probably pay a lot more attention to sprucing up the area around the heritage sites. And the interesting thing is that the heritage sites themselves are very well maintained. So I was very pleasantly surprised by that. They're in a good state of,
that's nice,
conservation.
Right?
So that's what. So it was a little disconcerting.
Yeah. No, there's this sense, I think the reason I bring this up is not from a pessimistic point of view, but I feel we're sitting on a cusp of something we can do which is uniquely possible only in a country like this, because if we're able to kind of, as you said, embrace our past without like the sense of regret or the sense of resentment, and yet kind of embrace the what's coming our way with progress, we can truly create an experience for ourselves which is something which we can take forward and sustainably, because there's this sense now, when people who didn't have now do have, whether they've broken the lower middle class to the middle class trap, it's this, and I'm glad there are people doing this, like this lady who's cleaning the beach. I also saw some people who are retaining mother's recipes, and we'll come to that because I know you like food and you write about it, but they're retaining these recipes which are passed down instead of just sacrificing it all for Subway or a fast food chain which has come from the West. And we have coffee chains or food chains which are uniquely Indian, right? I mean, that's fine. But I think it's a blend of both, right? Because we can't reduce all food to just say Sarvana Bhavan or, Kailash, whatever, that place which seems to be in every damn airport. You can't just say Indian food is curry and dosa. There's so much more which is possible. And I think this is the hope I have, because if we can kind of say, build high-tech city in Hyderabad, which is the state-of-the-art IT park, which has all the biggest companies in the world. Yet, if we make Charminar in old Hyderabad one of the most beautiful, I know again, we have a population issue, we have a poverty issue, but if we can kind of acknowledge both, as opposed to saying, let's kind of brush this under the bridge because it was in the past we want to kind of be proud of, yet build this entire facade on these things, I think it's going to crumble.
Yeah, I agree completely, because I think there is this thing that, also I get really irritated by the fact that our idea of sort of cleaning up even the sort of heritage that we are proud of, so for instance, so sort of a Hindu temple or something, the idea is to slather it with, sort of fresh paint, or you put up bunting all over it, or you light it in like really garish colors.
Yeah.
And of course, the whole thing that, the heritage which you feel is not stable, so to say. Like, say, for instance, Muslim monuments, let's put it out there, or British colonial monuments, as an example. These are sort of, they're allowed to either degenerate, or they're just sort of ignored. They're like not very much is done on them, and which I think is a problem, because it's all a question of not acknowledging a certain part of your history, and whether you like it or not. There are aspects of our history which are very shameful, and that's not necessarily just medieval history. It's also ancient history. There are aspects of it which are not at all palatable, quite unsavory. But the point is that by ignoring that history, you can't turn it around. You can't change anything. That history is going to still be there. So why not just acknowledge that